The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
All right, let's get into it. Welcome back.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Short Game. We're coming at you with a great new episode. Let's count it off on the ones and twos with Raygan and Shane.
Welcome back to the Short Game. This is the show about short video games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I'm joined this week by my brother and bro host, Shane.
Yeah, I'm Shane Kelly, and I'm coming back to you on this podcast.
Sometimes you come into the show with energy that I don't understand, and it wasn't present while we were preparing to record, so...
It's my podcaster energy.
I see. Okay.
Casting pods.
Great. I'm glad you're here, Shane. And it's just the two of us this week. We're talking about a little game called Exo One. And it is a strange little thing. It's an experimental feeling thing. It's available on lots of platforms. It's on the Xbox Game Store. Excuse me. It's on the Epic Game Store. It's also on Xbox, and it's part of Xbox Game Pass. So if you're on PC there, you can pick it up there.
See, Raygan, you're coming into this episode with weird energy too. Usually, you forget to tell people where the games are available until the very end.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So my weird energy is good energy, and your weird energy is cursed.
Yes.
So this is a really very unique little game that was created by a single, pretty much solo developer, this guy named Jay Weston. He has a development house or studio or whatever you want to call it called Expletive, which is, I guess, a pun on or not pun, whatever you want to call it, on expletive and bleat, because it's got a goat logo. Expletive is basically this one guy, Jay Weston, and this is a very, very visually cool looking game for a totally solo project. But it also took a commensurately long amount of time to come out. This game had a Kickstarter way back that seems like ancient history. I think it's been in progress since at least 2016 or something like that.
I'm always curious when you see the final product of something like this, and you find out, oh, this was a Kickstarter, to see how was this actually pitched as a Kickstarter, because it's such a unique and kind of strange game.
I can tell you exactly how it was pitched, and I think they knew exactly what they were making from the start. Because if you look back at the old Kickstarter page, there's an Edge magazine quote in it that I should have pulled up in advance, and I don't have it in front of me now, but it was very the first thing on the Kickstarter page was it's Tiny Wings meets Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. And I think they knew exactly what they were making, because I can't think of a way to describe this better than Tiny Wings meets 2001 A Space Odyssey.
I have one description that might suffice, and that is orb.
Did you ponder this game, Shane?
I pondered the orb in this game, and then I pressed a button and it flattened into a disc, and that ruined it.
Yeah. We were pondering our orbs, and then they added that extra button. And so yeah, the short version of what this game is, how it plays. Exo One is a game about controlling an orb as it progresses across beautiful exoplanetary landscapes. There is a plot, sort of, but it is told in a sort of expressionist kind of way. There's light narration that's actually not words. It's gibberish sounds that are translated into subtitles.
I kind of think, I'm not totally sure about this, I think those gibberish sounds are the words backwards or something.
That might make sense. Yeah.
I think there's some kind of time travel implication in the absolute mess of a story this game has. The first thing you see in the game is a quote, though, which is, "Oh, and I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter silvered wings and done 100 things you've not dreamed of." Okay.
I am become orb.
Guys, I have had a couple of drinks before we started recording. I apologize to our paying listeners are forced to endure this, and even more so to my brother.
Yeah, this is a podcast recorded under duress. We won't get into the details, but this one was a late entrant, let's just say. But it's also like a really quick play, and it's on Game Pass, so it's a really easy sell, right? Like honestly, that is like the pitch that if you want to pitch a game to me, if you say this is like 3 hours or less and it's on Game Pass, like A+ sold, I will play that shit.
And you know what else sells this game is the look. I mean, it's visually an absolutely stunning game. Like if you see just kind of the opener of this game is this silver sphere crashing down out of space into a planet which subtitles tell you is named Sagan 5, which I guess...
Wonder who that might be named after.
Wonder who that might be named after, yeah. And Sagan 5 is composed of nothing but rolling hills, weird, crappy trees, ancient monoliths, and absolutely gorgeous volumetric storm clouds. That is one of the things that I think is maybe the biggest visual success of this game is the volumetric clouds and the overall just sort of look as you kind of pierce through those clouds. Your orb, when you press one of the buttons and it like quintuples its gravity or whatever, it can crash down through these clouds and break the sound barrier and create just like an absolutely insane display of like, you know, a O-ring of gas as it breaks the sound barrier and then crashes into the earth, or I guess into the Sagan 5. It's a very, very, very cool looking game.
Yeah, the big star here, other than the orb, we all praise the orb, is these landscapes. And they are so large and so I wouldn't exactly say detailed. It's not like you can like zoom in on every bug on every leaf or anything, but there's a lot of shape. There's a lot of like geometry to these landscapes. And each planet has its own unique qualities. So there's planets that are like lots of deserty looking hills or lots of rocks. There's planets with different, like, you know, mostly water, that kind of thing. Every one of them is clearly designed like a Tony Hawk level where it's, you know, you're supposed to skate through it in various different ways. But it's the Tiny Wings comparison is really valid here because you're kind of like using this momentum system. It's sort of a gravity manipulation system where your orb can be very light or it can be very heavy based on a button press. And it gets heavy, and then you start a downward fall. And if you hit a slope correctly, then you roll, and ideally you roll up the opposing cliff and let go of your Make My Sphere heavy button fast enough that then you get propelled upwards as your sphere becomes light and you're rolling uphill, and you can use that momentum to, you know, get sick air.
A couple of other controls there. There's a button that flattens your sphere into a disc, which allows you to glide and kind of maintain your height. You can only do that for a limited time, which is represented in what I think is a very cool visual. The orb kind of heats up like molten metal, and when it has fully cooled, then you're no longer able to use the glide ability. It's very, very cool looking. Again, like the visuals of this game are the real selling point to me. And then the other thing you can do is a little bit of a double jump, which you can do either on the ground or in the air. If you need to just gain a little bit of extra height, you got a couple of little kicks you can give it to jump up.
So Shane, how much Tiny Wings have you played in your lifetime?
Tiny Wings was a real staple for me on the iPhone about a decade ago. I guess.
God, a decade. Yeah. Don't say a decade ago when you talk about iPhone games. Oh my God, I feel old.
Raygan, it was the top selling game on iOS in 2011. Jesus. So yeah, just looking that up. So that's why I was going to pause. I kind of let us glance through that a little bit, but I'm sure we have listeners who might not have been deep into iPhone gaming a decade ago. Tiny Wings was a game that was also the product of a single developer. That one was made by a guy named Anders Ilger, I believe. Hopefully I'm saying that right. He was a German developer. And
a princely genius who gave a gift to the world.
That game absolutely slaps. It is a single player. They've expanded it a lot. I have a hard time remembering the edition or version it was in when I played it. But if you were to go back and play it now on iPad, you get a Tiny Wings HD or whatever. You can even play it multiplayer and stuff like that. But it was basically this same fall and fly mechanic where the bird, you had this sort of fat bird with the titular tiny wings. So it was not a good flying bird. It was more of a gliding, sliding bird. And it would coast from island to island. And you had to keep ahead of a sunset, I think, that was kind of coming up behind you. So you had to keep up your speed. It was
collecting coins.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Oh man, I just reinstalled it. This is cursed. I'm gonna kill myself playing this again. Oh my god, I played so much goddamn Tiny Wings.
Right.
It's got a good song, little soundtrack on it, and it has this incredible zen quality to it, where if you get good at it, which doesn't take that much work, honestly, it becomes this incredibly blissed out zen experience where you're able to just glide through these islands and do these perfectly timed dip jumps and eventually build up huge multipliers, and it just feels amazing. And this game was probably the game I spent the most time on my iPhone until Alto's Adventure and Alto's Odyssey. These are both, it has the feel of that sort of endless runner kind of thing, and I really can only have space in my heart for one of those at a time. But
True.
But Tiny Wings is an incredible game, and it's got this central mechanic, this sort of dive jump, or these sort of dippy landscape enabled swoopy jump things, that particular style of locomotion was very unique to this game. And there's a reason that when people talk about this game Exo One, they immediately go back to this decade-old iPhone game that probably no one plays anymore. And it's because it is doing this thing, and it's the first one of these I've seen again.
I don't think nobody plays this anymore is probably accurate. This was a game that still has a lot of adherence, and it was added to in an updated version to Apple Arcade only last October. So
what?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So,
okay.
So Tiny Wings, sorry, Tiny Wings.
No,
not Flappy.
Yeah, Flappy Bird is a whole
Flappy
different
Bird,
game. If you were thinking Flappy Bird, this is very different.
There's probably and this definitely sits very much in that kind of 2000s to 2010s iOS genre of the one button arcade game. So the inspiration from this kind of one button style game is coming here to Exo One, but
it's taken to dramatic extremes in every potential way that the concept could be expanded. So it's three-dimensional instead. It goes for, and so obviously it needs to be able to not just dip through two-dimensional valleys, but 3D valleys. So there's these wide open spaces and you can go in multiple directions. It adds these additional controls. Don't think Tiny Wings ever had this sort of flap, and it certainly never had a glide. It was all pretty much just about dip motions. So it adds these additional mechanics. And it attempts to add a story, something that Tiny Wings never had. Now, whether it succeeds at adding a story depends a little bit on your tastes in what counts as a story. But this attempts to. But it's an expansion on the Tiny Wings concept, basically, in every possible way. And it's really neat to see that return back to, because I don't think I've played anything that does this style of locomotion since Tiny Wings.
I really actually like minimalism in storytelling in games, and this is a good example of that. When you have kind of a minimal story in a game, basically how does this game tell its story? This game tells its story by as you're approaching Sagan 5, you're seeing things through what kind of looks like a NASA probe's viewfinder. You hear a little bit of discussion about a design for an alien probe and humanity trying to build an alien probe to the specifications of
basically Contact.
I was going to say it's basically Contact, which is a great movie. You should go watch it.
Yeah. If we're ever going to get outside of our solar system, it's going to have to be an alien cheat sheet. Honestly, there's no other way.
Yeah, maybe. Can we have a whole side conversation about sci-fi movies in this episode? Because that'd be kind of fun. I think our listeners would hate me, but
only because you have bad opinions. Go ahead.
No, I'm actually not prepared for that.
We'll do that another time.
We gotta do a movies podcast somehow. We gotta get Phil back.
Oh, patron exclusives. Yeah, listen to our bad opinions about film.
Yeah, I got a friend named Phil, who does a Twitch stream called Netflix and Phil, and
great title.
Great title.
Did he change his name for that one?
Did he change his name? No, he just somehow managed to not get sued by Netflix. And yeah, I love chatting movies, but I feel like I need a outlet to talk movies. It's not this podcast because this is not it.
Let us proceed to talk about a video game.
Continue. So yeah, Exo One. I think we've basically explained the game. Like, this is not a complicated game. I'll give you a little bit more on the structure. This has 11 different planets in it, and each one of those planets is a bit of a twist. So we don't usually go like level by level in describing a game, but in this one I kind of can, because first off, I took better notes than I often do, and second,
you took notes on this game? Go ahead, please.
Very,
go ahead.
Very minimal notes. I wrote down the name of each planet and what its gimmick is.
Okay.
So
have at it.
The second planet. So the first planet we talked about, that was Sagan 5, and Sagan 5 is your tutorial planet, and it's basically the Green Hill Zone. But the structure of each planet is kind of worth mentioning. Every planet has a weird distant beam of light that you can kind of see, and you are approaching it slowly, and as you get to that distant beam of light, at the end of it, you find this weird alien railgun that like will launch you to the next planet. That's basically the structure, right? There's also some collectible things, like something that gives you slightly long. There's little grabbable additional orbs that can let you glide a little longer. I don't think that's very necessary. It doesn't really. But, it expands the experience a little bit. So, yeah, Sagan 5, hills, storm clouds, kind of looks like Mars. Cool level. Basics. The second one is a planet called Noe. Gnowee. I don't know if that one's named after anybody. And this one is a very bizarre twist. First off, it's like blue mountains smashed together with these gigantic metal constructs. It's a very cool looking planet, and it's full of like weird little lights dancing around everywhere and wind blowing everywhere, and it's also tons of elevation to the terrain, and that makes it a lot more challenging to traverse. There are places where you're really going to have to like figure out how to get out of a weird canyon in order to keep going towards the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So it's a very cool.
Just Googled it, by the way, before we get off of Noe. Noe is in the mythology. This is from not Wikipedia, from some wiki article here. myths.fandom.com.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I guess
myths.fandom.
The
Hell
myths
yeah,
fandom.
We're about to
So
get the
take
shit.
this sourcing for what it's worth. In the mythology of the Aboriginal people of southeastern Australia, specifically the Watjobaluk people who spoke the Wurgaya language, I'm hoping my pronunciations were somewhere on target there. Noe is a solar goddess whose torch is the sun. This is developed by an Australian developer, in Adelaide, South Australia. So perhaps he was paying homage to the Aboriginal people whose land this game was developed on.
I mean, that's pretty cool. And I'll briefly mention that I do think it's kind of BS that we named all the planets after like Roman gods. Come on.
Yeah,
All the
there's
planets,
not that many
every
planets.
planet.
They could have spread that shit out a little more.
Yeah.
It does feel like maybe we should rethink some of those. So Mars. Come on, Mars.
Mars. The third...
real creative, because it's a red planet, because blood, because war. Got it. Mars? Come on.
Hey, some of my favorite candies are also called Mars. The third planet we get to here is called Quirinus 2. And I would say it's kind of similar to the first one. It's more of a volcanic...
I'm not going to Google the names of each of these, so let's proceed.
Yeah.
Come on.
Listeners, I'm sure that there's references here. I did not Google them. That one's more of like a volcanic planet with like weird plumes of smoke. It was... I didn't take a lot of notes about it. It was kind of like the first one. It was fun. Hot air rises, kind of a fun thing.
I don't know if I want to go through every single one of these. I want to talk about the ones that I disliked.
Oh, okay. Can I talk about... Well, sure. Let's talk about the ones you disliked.
So what is the one that you have to get into a weird basket or something? What was that about?
I seriously do not remember a weird basket. What?
You don't remember the one where there's like those big it's like a forested planet, and there's this whole bit where you have to like there's this like thing that's got like 3 glowing holes in it, and 2 of them have these big metal basket or looking things stuck in them, and you can get into the big metal basket and you pilot it into the hole.
Did we play completely different games? I don't remember that shit at all.
Maybe I did something optional that I hated. I hated that. I hated it a lot. So that was bad. But like, honestly, the thing that really pissed me off in this game was the level where you have to slingshot between asteroids, which sounds like it's going to be the dopest shit, right? Because like, who doesn't love Super Mario Galaxy? Who doesn't love things that play with the gravity of orbiting objects and slingshotting between them? That is always dope.
Raygan, I do remember the basket was throwing me off. You're talking about the like orb within an orb.
That's precisely what I'm talking about. The basket orb.
Okay.
The weird metal framework orb,
listeners,
I guess.
If you get into this game and it doesn't look like a basket to you, don't be surprised. It's basically a sphere. And that was on the planet called Daramlum. And yeah, you just get in that big ass thing and kind of roll it around. It's like
It was the first time where like there was something to do on the planet other than go to the end goal. And it was the only time this game, as far as I can remember, had a thing that you had to do on the planet other than just make your way using the fun traversal mechanic across the landscape to get to the end goal. And there were different ways that the game would like make it difficult to get across the landscape, but that was the only time where it was like I have to put a thing into a hole.
I'm kind of with you on that level. Like the levels here, each one like presents you with some level of interest.
This game was short, but I thought there were 2 or 3 too many levels anyway.
Yeah, maybe
I would have cut those 2.
This level in particular, it was very ambitious compared to the rest. Like it wanted to do a lot, which is cool. But there were some things that didn't totally work for me. That exact same level, you were saying it was forested. It had these like mangrove looking trees all over it, and the trees look good at a distance, but the closer you get, they don't look as good. And this game works really well visually in levels where you're seeing stuff at a big grand scale, right? You're moving fast, you're going through the clouds, you're launching yourself off of mountains. When you're like rolling through a forest, it kind of doesn't look as good. And it has the classic like video game problem of like, hey, either we have to let the player basically roll right through the trees, or the trees are like a wall, or we let them break the trees. And this one just goes with like, let's roll right on through, which is kind of,
preferable in a game that's about smooth, fluid rolling, in my opinion.
But like this is to combine that. This is also one of the planets where, the thing I really did like about that level is it had all these like the little bitty trees, but it also had like the gigantic trees where you'd like roll through hollow logs and like little log ramps and stuff from like dead trees. That's cool. They were trying to do like more of a forested world. That's cool. You know, the double orb thing like didn't work for you. It was quick for me. I had kind of forgotten about that.
I screwed it up once and ended up accidentally rolling the entire way back down to where I started, and that made me angry.
Sucks to suck, my friend.
Oh, well, yes, it does, and I know it more than anyone. And then the other one that really sucked, in my opinion, was the one that I was like, this looks awesome, the like asteroid orbiting thing, and it sounded like you didn't have any trouble with that. Is that right?
Yeah, this was this is actually the very next level. This is like level 6 called Coronides or Coronides or something like that. And in that one, they were trying to pull a Super Mario Odyssey kind of vibe where I
think you're thinking of Galaxy.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, Super Mario Galaxy. I think the theme here between levels, 6 and level 7 is that anytime they play with adding additional orbs, that's a failure because they put you instead of an orb within an orb, now you're an orb upon an orb. And you must kind of sort of slingshot yourself gravitationally in orbit to another little rock and thereby escape.
Can I just say, Shane, just as a side note, I am deep into my 30s, and the sentence that you just said was the first time in my entire life that I connected the word orb and orbit as being the same thing, essentially.
Okay.
Like, an orbit is a thing moving in an orb shape around another orb. Never occurred to me. I don't know why. I feel so dumb. Please continue.
Yeah. Speaking of having fun with words, Wordle is really good.
Oh yeah, orbit would be a bad word, or orb. Excuse me, it would be a bad starter word in Orble.
Are you okay?
I've got orb brain, Shane. I'm pondering too hard. Please continue.
Yeah, so that was the level 7. So yeah, I think like level 6 and level 7, they're like right smack dab in the middle of the game, right?
And they kind of suck, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're not great.
They were where I quit for the night, and I came back and had a good time finishing it up. But yeah,
most of the levels, when we're talking about the twist or the tweak that they have, it's something that's a lot more simplistic here. And it's like, you know.
Sorry, I'm still laughing about Orble. What did my brain do there? Sorry, let's keep going.
So yeah, there'll be like a level that has like really strong electrical charge and like it zaps you out of the sky or whatever. My very favorite level was one, I really liked the levels that had a lot of water, because the charge of the orb, like if you would fly through a cloud, it would like recharge your glide ability, the kind of heating you up, which basically anytime you're touching anything, including clouds or water, you're basically recharging the orb. And the water levels, like it's really, really like cool the way that you can just sort of skip across the water like a stone. That's like one of my favorite things in this game. And then it was also a level with lots of clouds, and the way that the game does clouds visually, already I mentioned it's like volumetric in terms of the clouds, but also when you're flying through the clouds, it has that kind of really nice visual of like little droplets of water hitting the camera, and it's very cool looking. And so you can get really high momentum on levels like that. And this one was really big. There were lots of little stones, but then these big islands in the middle of like giant oceans. And there were several things you had to collect. The later levels, you have to collect stuff, additional orbs. Orbs are big, by the way.
You love a good orb.
I'm still very pro orb. And this one had these like little orbs that were in hard to reach places. So like using the mechanics to kind of slingshot yourself like out of these oceans and up mountains to collect the orbs. That was, I thought, a really effective level. Just a really fun one to play and very beautiful to look at. That was level 9, Darwin 3.
Yeah, honestly, there's not that much else to say about this game. It might be worth talking very briefly a little more about the story. The story is such a non-entity in this game. It has one, and it was just intriguing enough to let me keep me interested until throughout its fairly brief playtime. The premise is that this that at some point prior to the beginning of the game, a exploration mission to Jupiter was lost. And it had, in a sort of like lunar lander kind of / lunar orbiter kind of thing. Most of the crew went down to Jupiter in a flyer, and one dude stayed up in an orbiter kind of monitoring the mission. And the flyer was lost with all hands, and the orbiter guy made it back to Earth alone. And some point during all of this or afterward, Earth receives a message with the design plans for what becomes known as the Exo One, a spaceship that will allow him to travel to exoplanets. And he believes somehow bring his dead or lost colleagues back. We get little hints in these various bits of non-narration that's subtitled.
Listener, I played this game and took notes, and nothing Raygan says is the story.
Please tell me what you mean by that.
I mean that this game tells its story in such a minimal and obscure way that it might as well not have one.
Yeah, that's honestly true. Like, you could ignore the story in this and be perfectly fine, or you could spend a lot of time pondering, just like the orb, the little dribbles of story that this game gives you, and there's something there to keep you engaged. But this is by far not a game to play for its story. It is a game to play for its incredible visuals. So, like, one of the things I noticed reading this, the developer's bio, is that after working for a publisher of racing games for many years, he split off to create his own little studio that focused on creating basically skyboxes for games. And that makes sense to me because like this is clearly coming from a guy who has like a lot of experience doing incredibly cool looking detailed visual environments. And he's got one good mechanic to use in those environments. The like swooping mechanic is great. It plays really well. It's also got a good soundtrack, but really, I think here the star of the show is these incredibly beautiful visual environments. And that comes down to not just things like, wow, the lighting looks good and the orb is shiny, but like also like being able to really carry off these like incredibly detailed landscapes that seem to go on forever and have the feeling of being like somewhere in between being authored and generated. If I had to say, like this feels a little bit like if somebody has one of those, every now and then you see these like incredible demos, right, where somebody's like, I've created this thing that generates an incredible looking 3D landscape, and it's only 500 kilobytes of JavaScript or something, right? These kinds of things. It feels like somebody started with that and then like polished and polished and polished until they had something game worthy. Every single one of these levels has a little bit of this feel of sort of like chaotic randomness from nature / generative code that's been shaped a little bit to fit a particular idea of what a level should be for this game. But that's not to say like sometimes I say like things are randomly generated or procedurally generated is a little bit of a death
but they
knell in a
don't
lot of games.
feel
not
samey.
Here. It doesn't
matter. Like that's the thing when you do randomly generated terrain and in games or in things like that, you get something that is like, and I've played games that do that, like No Man's Sky. I played tons of it, and I can't remember who termed it like this, but it's the oatmeal problem. You can create 50 billion algorithmically generated bowls of oatmeal, each one completely different from every other bowl of oatmeal, but every one of them is still a bowl of oatmeal. The worlds in this are very much authored. Like they are big, and so they have like they have a little bit of that feeling, and I think artistically they have that look, which is also a part of it. They look like those kind of tech demo landscapes like you're describing, but they have a design. They're designed to play.
There are hills in these levels that like feel like, in a sense, they are like 50 different potential intersections of a sphere, right? Like they have these sort of like generated shapes kind of look to them, but like it's clear that the developer put a lot of thought into like, well, what sorts of shapes should we be generating for this level versus the next one, which have different approaches. So yeah, they all have this sort of like chaotic randomness, this sort of vaguely naturey kind of feel to their landscapes, but having 11 of them, that's a lot. And each of them is pretty significantly different from every other one. So that there's a lot going for it just there. Yes, always your goal is like, I want to look for down slopes with up slopes next to them. And, that's what you're looking for ultimately in all of these levels. But like they do have enough variety to like, I don't know, they're just different enough.
Yeah, I think this game holds up through all of the levels. We have a couple of levels that we're calling out as like, we don't really love the twist that they put on it, but those were kind of the levels where they put a big twist on it, right? Like the rest of it all really works. If they did like genuinely have like an algorithmically generated version of this game, like you're saying, kind of looks like, I think that would actually be fun. Like it's genuinely a fun mechanic. Landing the whatever you call it, the rebound off the ground there is very satisfying. And so that's all I have to say about the game. Is it's a very satisfying thing to play. The game is fun enough that like I finished it in one setting. And if you have access to it through something like Game Pass, I think it's a no-brainer. If you
I finished this one in 3.5 hours, and I think that is exactly I would have liked to have spent slightly less time with it than that, because I did get stuck on some of those middle levels like we talked about. But ultimately, like, this is a great game to sit down with for a couple of hours. It has this feeling of like, if you've ever really wanted to just like sit down and bliss out with like a really cool iTunes visualizer, but it also plays well, like as a game, that's what this is. It's like really slick visuals that's meant to give you like, an evening or two of pretty chilled out, really good looking thing to play that isn't going to require you to learn a bunch of systems or think about scores. It's just about an experience, and that's pretty cool. And this is also exactly the kind of thing that I like to see come to services like Game Pass, which is where I played it, because it's perfect to just download this and give it a try. And if it's not for you, no sweat. But I think it's going to be the right thing at the right time for some people, and it's great to see it coming out on something like Game Pass.
If you do not have Game Pass, then you're probably picking it up on Steam. And on Steam, it costs right now $17, which I think is a pretty good price for something like this. I think that a lot of these kind of indie experiences that are fairly short, but unique and interesting, and I think you might actually find this a little bit replayable because it's such a zen experience.
Yeah, I can see that.
Anything else we need to say about it? It's almost. I was really worried we would have a hard time talking. That's the reason I took notes on this. Is I was worried we would have a hard time talking about it because it's so abstract. It looks like the cover to a Journey album. And it's just like, oh, it's Tiny Wings meets Orb. so I was kind of worried I wouldn't have that much to say about it. Like, the levels are planets where you swoop. Every one of them you swoop more or differently. But I'm glad we managed to figure out a good way to talk about it.
So before we wrap up for real, let's take a quick sec to bring in a segment. We've got a little bit of time on the clock, and so it's a good time for it, that we've been talking about doing. Do you remember back in episode 300, I made an offhand comment that I was going to keep the questions that we hadn't gotten to yet, and I wanted to do a segment on the show where we would start answering listener questions. Well, I decided now is the time for us to do that. It is just the two of us, so we won't be getting the full experience. But listeners, if you have questions for the show, we do still want them. And it's easy to get them to us either via Discord, where we have a channel set up for that purpose, or you can add us on Twitter. But I have a question that was left over from our episode 300 Q&As, which I thought was a fun question I wanted to get back to. So this one, it comes in from Rubella on our Discord, and that is, what is your what is your biggest gaming buyer's remorse? Like a game that you bought and ended up hating so much that you could find no positive for having bought it. And he says that his was Mario Tennis Aces for the Nintendo Switch. Well, first of all, Mario Tennis Aces wasn't that bad. Come on, man. Mario Tennis Aces was fine. It wasn't the best Mario Tennis game. I played a lot of Mario Tennis games, but like, it's still a Mario Tennis game. It's still fun. I played that with a few people. I enjoyed it. It's not nearly as good as the Mario Golf for the Switch, which I thought was pretty damn good. But yeah, I don't know, man. Not that bad. Did you play either of those, Shane?
I played Mario Tennis. I kind of fell off of it pretty fast. I wouldn't say I necessarily regret buying it. I mean, it was like a full price game.
Yeah, that's true. Like Nintendo stuff is like, it's full price games all the way down. So sometimes it's easy to have buyer's remorse about a Nintendo game if you pick one up and it's not good or you don't like it.
Can I have buyer's remorse for something that I didn't actually buy that I received as a gift as a child?
Sure. What is it?
The Aura Interactive virtual reality gameware.
Oh my God. I forgot we owned that. Describe that. Yeah, okay, so, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So this, also known as the Aura Interactor.
The Interactor, yeah. Interactor. Wait. Was this the thing that you put on the floor, or was this the thing that you strapped to your chest?
Yeah, this is the one you strapped to your chest.
Okay. So I'm misremembering.
Mom and Dad, once we had gotten into Sega Genesis,
we got it bad.
Yeah,
we Sega Genesis.
We were. I think they were like, well, they really like that Sega Genesis. We got to get all the Gugas to enhance their Sega experience, which of course means that you want to give your little boys a wearable force feedback vest that plugs into the Sega Genesis and provides them with low frequency vibrations in their chest that are loosely associated with what's going on in the video game.
Just what you want to get for two boys with a family history of heart disease. Let's vibrate their bodies in weird ways based on computers. That thing was awful.
The funny thing about it is, like, theoretically it's cool if you're playing it with like a fighting game. Like, it had a deal where it was like certain software it would like sync up with, like Mortal Kombat 2.
No, that's bullshit. What it does was, it's a subwoofer essentially. Like it just played.
Well, for games that weren't like that, it wasn't like set up to specifically work with. That was the deal, and so that was basically all the games. Because the thing about it was, Mortal Kombat 2, our mother would not let us have. So
I'm suspicious even that they actually had anything special about Mortal Kombat 2. I think it's just like it was listening for deep sounds, like the thuds of hits in a fighting game, and then it would vibrate your nipples or whatever. I can't see the benefit of it. I suppose there's probably some small benefit if you did have proper speakers, because like maybe, you've got the like decent speakers, but you don't have a proper subwoofer, and maybe it would be kind of interesting to wear a subwoofer. I'm sure we've all put our hands up to a subwoofer and been like, that feels neat, like has some kick to it. Maybe that would be kind of neat, right? But like, we were playing most of our video games on a tiny 10-inch CRT television in your bedroom with a single mono speaker that sounded like absolute ass. So imagine like crackly, tinny little sounds accompanied by the right on your body. I can't see the appeal of it.
It's all immaterial because the device was so difficult to actually set up and connect to everything else that we never used it.
I think that's true. Yeah. I would, in the same vein of like bad Sega gifts, it also doesn't count as far as buyer's remorse. I have an actual answer for that in a moment, but it's less interesting. The thing that sprung to mind was the 32X. which we got because we were, of course, also Sega nerds, and our parents didn't want to buy us whatever the new hotness was, or maybe there was no new hotness yet, but the 32X was out, so that's what we got for Christmas. And it lasted for all of like 2 weeks max, because the Sega 32X was janky AF and just didn't work. So there was like this one game that we liked a lot that was called like
Shadow Squadron.
Shadow Squadron.
That game
is actually
rips.
really good. It's like a 3D space combat game.
I almost guarantee you this was the first 3D game I ever played. My memory's a little hazy on it, but the thing that I really liked about it is that, being twins, we particularly liked games that were cooperative in some way. And if you play this game with 2 controllers, one controller flies the space jet, and then the other one would move the reticle and like control the guns, which was pretty sweet.
That was really a good option for, like, you don't think about that, but like that's a cooperative option that, like, for a game that would be traditionally single player, it made the game really fun for 2 people. It was awesome. And we loved that game for the full 2 weeks that our 32X worked, and then it broke.
Raygan, I would like to play this again. Please figure out a way to make it happen.
I'll figure something. I don't own a 32X today, but yeah. I read about that a while ago. There's like a sequel. It's like on the Xbox.
Oh, for real? Cool.
Yeah, we should look that up. I forget what it's called. It's like something else Squadron. It's like a loose sequel. But anyway, really liked the 32X. I was very excited about it. And then it broke. And this was back in the 90s when there were no YouTube guides or Googling a problem. And even the idea of getting something serviced was an impossibility because shipping was expensive and you'd have to like find a phone number or write to an PO box or something. And it was all a nightmare. We just never got the thing fixed, even though it only lasted for us like 2 weeks. So that would have been my number one buyer's remorse if I had been the buyer. I was not the buyer. The only thing that I can really, like, I'm not a person who like buys games that willy-nilly, and also I'm not in such a position in my life where like buying a game that I don't enjoy like becomes a memorable thing. Like, I'm not really like ruining the day that I bought a game for my PlayStation 4 and didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, it's kind of true. We by the nature of this show, we start and drop a lot of games.
Yeah, and that's just sort of part of my life, right? Like, so the time when a game feels like buyer's remorse to me is more along the lines of like if I buy a game and I feel very excited about it and I want to like it a lot, and then I don't, because that's a little more memorable to me. And the one that sticks out most in my mind at the moment, maybe if you asked me tomorrow, I'd come up with a different answer, is Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Dana. The subtitle on that always gave me a little bit of a chuckle.
Please say that again.
I was like,
one more time.
Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Dana. That's the series that's spelled YS, like big YS, Ys, like the Joanna Newsom album. Anyway, the Ys series is a series of action RPGs.
Lacrimosa is like the Virgin Mary? Is this a religious?
It has to. I didn't get to the point where it really explained the Lacrimosa.
Okay.
But yeah, the E series is something I've always wanted to get into. I kind of like action RPGs. Everyone, and also this was at a time when the Vita was like on its way out, but I was still a bit of a Vita fanboy. And when Lacrimosa of Dana came out, all the Vita people were like, "Man, we've got a cool exclusive here that it's out on everything now. You can get it on PlayStation 4, you can get it on Switch." But it was like a get for the Vita at the time, and I was really excited. I pre-ordered that thing. I got it day one, shipped to me, and I really wanted to like it, man. I really wanted to like it. So I put kind of an unreasonable amount of time into it for a game that I found myself just not enjoying at all. It's been long enough that I'm not sure I could really give you a point by point of why I didn't like it. It's just, and I'm not even sure if maybe this is like, I don't agree with the Ys series, or maybe I would like other games in it if I tried them. But something about that game just didn't make sense to me. I kept getting lost. It was weird. I didn't like it. And that's the closest I can think of. I really wanted to like that game and didn't. I don't know. You have any other thoughts on this question?
Nah. Like I said, I'm not usually too worried about not liking a game. I quit lots of games.
Yeah, give yourself permission to quit games. I think it's a wonderful thing. Games are, as a hobby, like, it can be a little expensive, but buying games isn't that big of a deal. I know, like, look, I'm speaking from a point of view of privilege. Like, I'm not like a wealthy person, but like buying a game and being disappointed in it is not going to ruin my day, let alone my month. And I know that's not the case for some people. Some people, want to buy a game that it's an expensive, a little investment for them, and it's something that they are hoping to get a significant amount of enjoyment over time for. And I'm not dissing that. That's that's just not my experience with gaming. I tend to buy games if I'm even remotely interested in them, and if I'm not enjoying them after a very short amount of time, I drop them. And that's part of like the kind of omnivorous diet I have to do a podcast, and also just like I like short games because like I'm much more likely to finish them, and even if I'm kind of lukewarm on them. Anyway, thank you, Rubella, on the Discord for this question. And listeners, again, if you want to get a question on the show, even if it's just something like a topic suggestion or something, send them to us. You can find us on the internet at www.theshortgame.net, where you'll find all of our ways to contact us, including a contact form and all that. Our Twitter is @_shortgame. You can find me on Twitter @RayganK. Shane, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter @8bitshane.
Oh, and I forgot to mention the Discord and Patreon. You can find our Patreon, patreon.com/theshortgame. We've had some new patrons recently. Thank you so much to our new patrons. Patrons get access to our Discord, which I already mentioned. You get access to our patrons-only feed, which is mostly just episodes a little early, but also we're trying to release some patron-only content. If you have suggestions for that, we're all ears. And if you back us at the $5 level, I will personally send you an envelope full of stickers and also some deep, heartfelt thanks. So listeners, thank you once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.
Listeners, I can assure you that those stickers are adhesive.
And how?